Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Have History Will Travel. I'm your host, the Wilder historian, Dr. Lucas Wilder, and last time the 15th Corps of the Army of the Tennessee reclaimed a mile of their entrenchments by pushing back Cheatham's corps. Now the fight shifts south, again as Cleburne's men launch another assault. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, join the Patreon page, or purchase something from the Teespring store or Etsy shop. Every little bit helps. Thank you. The 15th Corps of the Army of the Tennessee pushed Benjamin Cheatham's corps out of the entrenchments that the Confederate corps captured just an hour before. To the south, the attacks by George Maney's division and Patrick Cleburne's division were about to be renewed, at least partially. Francis M. Walker's brigade, which William Hardee sent to his right to aid in the attacks by William Bate and William H.T. Walker's divisions, didn't engage in the earlier attacks and now came back to the left of Hardee's line, back to Maney's division, where it belonged. Additionally, William Barkelow's brigade also came to the left to assist Cleburne and Maney. Barkelow, who took command of the brigade when Hugh Mercer became the division commander when William H.T. Walker was killed, claimed he was told Cleburne no longer needed the brigade. Barkelow excused himself from the field because he had left his sickbed to fight in the battle, but now he was too exhausted to continue. He handed over command of the brigade to Morgan Rawls of the 54th Georgia. This was the third change of commanders for this brigade in that single day of battle. Rawls and Walker advanced and hit the Yankee troops in the flank, pushing them back in great haste, rolling them up again for the second time that day. Walker's brigade slammed into the front of the Union position just south of Bald Hill and made repeated attacks against the position, diverting the attention of the Federals, who continued to get hit in the flank by Rawls. Sam Watkins of the 1st Tennessee Infantry under Walker remembered, "We rushed forward up the steep hillsides, the seething fires from 10,000 muskets and small arms, and 40 pieces of cannon hurled right into our very faces, scorching and burning our clothes and hands and faces from their rapid discharges, and piling the ground with our dead and wounded almost in heaps. It seemed that the hot flames of hell were turned loose in all their fury, while the demons of damnation were laughing in the flames, like seething serpents hissing out their rage. We gave one long and loud cheer and commenced the charge. As we approached their lines like a mighty inundation of the river Acheron and the infernal regions, Confederate and Federal met. Officers with drawn swords meet officers with drawn swords, and man to man meets man to man with bayonets and loaded guns. The continued roar of battle sounded like unbottled thunder. Blood covered the ground, and the dense smoke filled our eyes and ears and faces. The groans of the wounded and dying rose above the thunder of battle. But being heavily supported by Cleburne's division and by General L. E. Polk's brigade, headed and led by General Cleburne in person, and followed by the 1st and 27th up the blazing crest, the Federal lines waver and break and fly, leaving us in possession of their breastworks and the battlefield, and I do not know how many pieces of artillery, prisoners, and small arms. On the final charge that was made, I was shot in the ankle and heel of my foot. I crawled into their abandoned ditch, which then seemed full and running over with our wounded soldiers. I dodged behind the embankment to get out of the raking fire that was ripping through the bushes and tearing up the ground. The fire enraged in front, we could hear the shout of the charge and the clash of battle. While I was sitting here, a cannonball came tearing down the works, cutting a soldier's head off, spattering his brains all over my face and bosom, and mangling and tearing 4 or 5 others to shreds. As a wounded horse was being led off, a cannonball struck him, and he was literally ripped open, falling in the very place I had just moved from. Walker was mortally wounded in the attack. Rawls was also wounded, but survived. He turned command over to Cincinnatus Gotton of the 57th Georgia. The attack was masterful, and unlike the previous attacks on the flank, had held together instead of breaking apart, but it was now starting to stall. Grenville Dodge, the 16th Corps commander who fought against William Bate and William H.T. Walker's division earlier in the day, had requested for the 17th Corps to link up with his troops since the attack. As the Federal soldiers fell back from this most recent attack, they came close to forming that link as Federal soldiers rallied to return fire against the rebels. By this point, Cleburne's men were back in the front line, extending the Confederate line to the right. Young and Govan's men attacked the Union battle line, and hand-to-hand fighting broke out. 2 of Govan's men approached the color bearer of the 78th Ohio and attempted to grab him and the flag. The color bearer knocked one of the men down with his fist. The Ohioan was shot in the shoulder, and the 2 men began to drag him and the flag toward the Confederate line. Captain John Orr of Company H of the 78th Ohio ran up and began to slash with his sword until the rebels were scared off and the flag and its bearer could be brought back to the Union line. Darkness was beginning to cover the battlefield. The Confederates of William Hardee's corps remained close to the enemy line, not wanting to give up the ground they captured. As the fight raged on the Union left flank, Confederate cavalry commander Joseph Wheeler was attacking Decatur and the little garrison of troops stationed there. 3 Union regiments guarded 1,600 Union Army wagons loaded with supplies. The whole day, Wheeler pressed the small band of men, but the stubborn Federals performed a slow withdrawal, delaying the rebel host, making sure all the wagons got away. By the time the Federals were north of the town, James Riley's brigade of the 23rd Corps of the Army of the Ohio came to assist them and prevent Wheeler from capturing the wagons. With that action concluded, the Battle of Atlanta came to an end. It was a brutal battle for both sides, with the Union battle line breaking on 3 separate occasions, but each time they were able to take back the lost ground and fight off the rebels. The undulating terrain wreaked havoc in the Confederate attacks by breaking up their formation and weakening the attacks overall. So, even though the rebels were able to break the Yankee line on multiple occasions, they weren't able to follow up on those successes. The Union lost 3,722 men in all, and the Confederacy lost 5,500 men in all, bringing the battle to a total of 9,222. The bloodiest battle of the Atlanta Campaign. Within 3 days, Confederate Army Commander John Bell Hood launched 2 massive attacks against William T. Sherman's army group, but none drove the Federal commander from the field.